invited to the ACLU's meeting on mental health training for the police. This training is supposed to introduce police officers to the idea that some of the people that they come in contact with may be suffering from mental disabilities, and that they should not be treated as criminals but should be treated as people. All people who come in contact with police should be treated as people. This stems from a case here in Cleveland that happened a week before the Tamir Rice shooting. On November 13th, Tanisha Anderson was killed by Cleveland police who were called to her house to check on her well-being by her family. They instead showed up and killed her. In response to the consent decree brought down by the Department of Justice on the Cleveland police, the ACLU of Ohio, in conjunction with Cuyahoga County, has developed a program to train.
One of the things that you did talk about is continual training for the police. So after the first training, are they made to come back every year for training?
But the continuous training, I won't likely be every year, but at some frequency, we need to revisit the trained officers' awareness and still how well they are employing the tools that they learned from the first training. You're absolutely right.
I think having continuous touches with those officers, keeping the issue of mental health out in the forefront of their mind is incredibly important. In Cincinnati, they actually created a program where they had more frequent conversations with mental health providers than even just yearly, that they had quarterly check-ins. I think that we need to provide more mental health training for lots of folks. I might say, though, that maybe we need less police in our schools and hospitals, though, too.
Any given day on the job, police officers can be interacting with individuals with disabilities, and that can include individuals with mental illness. So it's just common sense that those same police officers should have the proper training to be able to work with, serve, and protect that community.
There was about a year-long investigation. We were charged. It was not an open-ended investigation of Cleveland Police. It was specific to the use of force, both deadly and non-deadly. So in layman's terms, shooting guns or hitting people, tasing people, that sort of stuff. We found in December of 14 that Cleveland Police did engage in what we call a pattern or practice of excessive use of force. One of the things we really hit on, obviously, was the lack of training as it relates to a lot of things, but particularly to dealing with those with mental illness.
The issues we're seeing with policing and people with mental illness and disabilities really points to the overall problem of over-incarceration of people with mental illnesses. That we as a state and as a nation have deprioritized mental health treatment and rehabilitative care. And so instead we now rely on the criminal justice system to interact with those people and treat those people. Our state prison system is now the largest mental health provider here in the state. There are estimates that about 10% of all police calls involve a person with mental illness. So we had just begun the process of the collaborative agreement in Cincinnati, Ohio, which many of you are likely familiar with. This was in response to several shootings over several years of African American men in the city of Cincinnati, in addition to decades of poor treatment by the police towards the African American community. I think it's important to recognize Cincinnati is regarded as a smashing success these days in terms of police reform, but I think it's important to recognize that there were certainly bumps in the road. So the incident I want to talk about happened in 2003. So this was over a year after the collaborative agreement had been in place. And on the morning of November 30th, the police had received a call from some managers at a local White Castle in Cincinnati, Ohio. There was a man in the parking lot, and he had been out there for a few hours dancing. And he was very happy and dancing and singing and making all sorts of noise and seemed to be delirious. He had eventually kind of fallen down a hill and then gotten back up, but the managers were concerned because there seemed like there just wasn't something not right about him. So they called police and police responded. In the collaborative agreement, there was a mental health response team, but as Mike alluded to before, they didn't have enough people yet on the force on this team to have somebody respond at 5:30 in the morning. Officers who responded did not have mental health training. They immediately came and used the tactics that most officers are taught in police training. You use a very stern voice, you be really loud, you be authoritative, and the gentleman, Nate Jones, he reacted very poorly. He was beaten with metal batons and put into a restraint position, passed away that day. It was a very scary time in Cincinnati. Again, it was only 2 years earlier that there was great unrest in the
The
city.
director of the ACLU of Ohio claimed that similar training has been issued to police in Cincinnati. He boasts of the program's success, but as we saw just last week, police in Cincinnati didn't get the memo as they tased a peaceful protester that was caught on video by cop block cameras held by Ademo Freeman and Brian Sumner of Fresno Cop Block. I say, while I'm happy to see some forward progress on the issue of police brutality, this seems to be advanced training when basic training is needed even more. The police across America seem to forget the fact that they work for us. They also seem to forget the fact that they're there because we pay them to be there. In Tanisha Anderson's case, she was not suspected of any crime. The only reason the police had to be there was to do a welfare check. The biggest threat to her welfare turned out to be the police. Tanisha's death has been ruled a homicide, yet no Cleveland police officer has been brought to justice for her murder. Wednesday on Cop Block Radio, we will be talking to Jasmine Johnson, who happens to be Tanisha Anderson's sister. I met her at a protest for her sister shortly after Tamir Rice was shot. Cop Block Radio will air 10 p.m. Wednesday, as usual on LRN.FM. You can catch up with us at copblock.org/show. And if you have any questions and you want to call into the show, 413-418-COPS.
Catch Cop Block
Or you
Radio
can Skype in
every
Cop Block
Wednesday
Radio
night
as the
on
contact.
LRN.FM.
Thank you, and remember,
10
badges
p.m.
don't grant
Eastern,
extra
9
rights.
Central. Cop Block Radio.